everybody. Hi, it's Becky from Power Tools with Thread. If you have been sewing along with me doing Lori Holt's chicken salad, I wanted to talk to you guys about doing these chickens in multiple hoopings. I've had a lot of requests to show how to do this in a smaller hoop. So when you get to where you're doing embroidery, as a general rule, regardless of the machine brand that you have, regardless of the hoop size, there is usually about 1/2 of an inch all the way around inside of a hoop that you really can't stitch on. The machine won't let the embroidery foot get that close because it doesn't want to hit it and do any irrevocable damage. So while like this is the 10x16 hoop from Brother, I can't use that full amount. Well, the same goes for smaller hoops as well. So let me get in here and show you exactly kind of some things you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about doing multiple hoopings to do a larger embroidery project. And this would apply to any embroidery project. So if we take a look here, what you're going to have to determine, so if I take this smaller hoop and I put it here, you can tell this is the 9x14 and this is the 10x16. This goes with the Brother Luminaire or the Baby Lock Solaris. And if you don't have either one of these machines, this hoop goes with the Dream machine or the Baby Lock Elegante 2, whatever holds that kind of size. So that's not going to work, all right? It won't work if I try to center the bird in the hoop. You can tell that this wing is too big and this tail is too big. When you are going to decide to do multiple hoopings, maybe you're forced into it, what you need to think about, where can you get the most bang for your buck when it comes to what you're going to stitch? So here, I could get the majority of this chicken done from the comb all the way down to the feet as well without the tail. When I'm doing this, I'm going to show you, we're going to do the tail as a separate hooping, because the tail just is not going to fit. And I'm going to show you how to do that. When you think about that, I want to get in even closer here and show you. For this chicken, the tail is on top of the body. In some of the pictures in the pattern, the body's on top of the tail. You're going to have to figure out when you decide you're going to do multiple hoopings, what you're going to put down on top of what. So in this one, I'm going to stitch all of the chicken, all the other pieces in one hooping, and then we're going to do the tail in a second hooping. When you do this technique, you're going to need to be able to print out the design that is going to be your second hooping so that you can figure out exactly where it's going to be placed on top of this one. If you have a camera system, then that can be easier to do because you can scan the hoop and then it will tell you on your screen what it saw, and then you can take the tail piece and move it around and see exactly where it's going to stitch. So that'll work out just fine. If you don't have a camera system, you're going to want to print out the tail. And I'm going to use Designs and Machine Embroidery print and stick target paper. I'm going to be using the print feature that's in Simply Applique because we're building this with Simply Applique. Let's say you're not using Simply Applique and you're doing another project. Brilliance Express does allow you to print whatever on the screen. You can't save it, but you can print it. And that's free to use. But I really like the dime print and stick target paper because I can take that piece and I can rotate it exactly the way I want it to be and know exactly where that center crosshair and get it straight. You're going to need a grid to put in your hoop. This is if you don't have a camera system, you're going to need your grid. And that's why earlier this week I released the video of how to make a grid. I'll put a link to it right here. How to make your own grid if you don't have one. For some reason, some machine hoops don't come with them, or they might have been lost, or somebody told you didn't need them and throw them away. Well, no. You know, sometimes when technology isn't all that great, it's the old school methods that you really need to know and have those in your little arsenal up here in your head so that you can rely back on those old school methods to be able to get things straight in the hoop. So I'm going to show you how to do all of that. Hooping all of this one, not that big of a deal, but hooping the tail and getting it so that it lands exactly on the chicken right here where you want it to, that's where those old school hooping techniques really come into play. So let's get started. Once you've figured out which piece you want to stitch separately, then you want to highlight that particular piece. So I'm going to click, if I just try to click on the tail, it's going to select the whole thing. So the hoop that I've got right here, you can look at the bottom. It's the 9x14 that I use all the time. If I click the design, the size of the design will show over here, and it is like 9.5 by 10.25. So it's not going to fit in this hoop. There's a couple of different things you need to do. So the first thing I want to do is grab that tail, and you want all 3 lines of the tail, not just the blanket stitching. So we have where it says applique material, that's your placement line, applique position, that's your tack down, and then this is your final blanket stitch. You want to highlight just those 3. Take a look at this now. So see how big this is. This is how big this piece looks. It's showing the center of the design right here, and that's not the center of the design. The center of the design of the tail is going to be right here. So that's one thing. We need this tail to be its own design. So you can't use the tail that is included when you put it all together. You've got an idea of how it's going to look so you can see this, but we can't use this tail. So I'm just going to hit delete right now. That gets rid of the tail completely, and that's what you want to do. Now I need to center Percy in the hoop. So I'm going to, right here, I'm on the Arrange tab, and I'm going to click Center. So that's going to center all of Percy except for the tail. Now what we need to do is I want to come up here to the New tab. There's an icon right up here for New. I'm going to click that. Oh, let me come back over here from Percy Final 2. I'm going to File, Save As, and it will be Percy No Tail. And I'm going to save him to my embroidery machine format right there. It already exists. Yep, yes, because I was playing with it. Okay, so this is how Percy is going to stitch out. This will be one full single stitch out, and it's going to be just fine. So that'll be your first hooping. Now we're going to go to the new one, and I need to create just the tail as a design of its own. So I'm going to click on this icon, import FCM, and I want Percy's tail, and I believe, let's see, that's this one. It's piece number 15. So I'm going to click open. I'm going to grab the tail, move it over to the side, highlight everything else, and hit delete. Now I want the tail to be in the middle. So I'm going to Arrange, and I'm going to Center. This is important because we need to do a printout of this with crosshairs. I need to flip the tail, so I'm going to flip horizontal, and that makes the tail correct. Now, if we were doing it all in one, you would know that that tail is actually rotated. But we're not. We need to find the crosshair center of this. So now what you need to do, we know from how we saw it over here that that tail is rotated. Let me click on this guy, and I'm gonna rotate right 90 so it's straight to us. Okay. Now I'm going to take this one. Okay, and I'm going to right click and copy, and come back over here to Percy Final 2 and right click and paste. And I'm going to bring this up here. So now it is its own object, and I'm going to rotate it to where I want it. So I know what that rotation needs to look like because we're going to need the crosshairs to be correct. This matters. Okay, there. That's how the tail needs to look. So now I'm going to right click, copy, and come back here, right click and paste, and see how it's been rotated. Now it is rotated in the orientation we need it to be for the next stitch out. So I'm going to click this one and I'm going to hit delete. And now I want to center this one in the hoop. It is all selected. I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to go to Convert to Applique, and I'm going to come over here and change it to the blanket stitch and click Apply. Now this is ready to be printed. So I'm going to File and come down here to Print. And I only want page 1 because page 2 gives you a whole bunch of thread changes, and you don't need that. So I'm just going to hit Print page 1. And now I'm going to File, Save As, Percy Tail. And I want it to be a PES file so I can use it on my machine and hit Save. So what we did was, from the tail that was here before, I showed you that because it is part of the design and it's got threads, you can see these threads jumping like this, you can't use that tail from before. You're going to have a separate tail because it made it too big and you wouldn't get center. Once we came over here and we brought in the tail, then we copied, pasted back over here, got it in the orientation that we wanted. Okay, and then it pasted this and then copied that orientation change where it was rotated and brought it back and then printed it and saved it as an embroidery design file. So now I can save it to USB or send it wirelessly or however you want to do that in order to be able to make it a second hooping. All right, I have some no-show poly mesh and I am hooping my 9x14 hoop. I looked to see if you could do this in a 6x10, and I don't think that you can. I mean, maybe, but you're gonna be hooping and rehooping, and I don't think it'd be any fun. But it's up to you, whatever you want to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and hoop this the traditional way. If you don't want to float it, just want to make sure your hoop is nice and big. Center does not matter because we're gonna cut the block down after it's been stitched. We'll square to 12.5. Press in the bottom. There, that's a good hooping, and I'll tighten it up. Okay, this looks good. Ready to go stitch out the first, which is Percy with no tail. Okay, I'm here at the machine. I'm gonna go to embroidery and the pocket for memory. And it is on the USB stick. So there is Percy no tail right there. And I'm just going to go through the exact same process like I did with Hattie, laying down the pieces, and I am going to skip the tack down stitch on these because I think it has a much cleaner look without that. I'm going to use my little ironing pad this time. This is a pattern from Embroidery Garden. Has little tails on it. To do this second hooping, I'm using a dime hoop mat. I really like it more than just keeping the hoop from scooching all over the place. It's got these big dark lines that are the length and width of the mat, and that's very helpful. So I printed out the tail piece on Dime's Designs and Machine Embroidery print and stick target paper. Very, very handy to have. And it sticks and resticks over and over. So if you don't get it placed exactly right the first time, that's fine. You're going to be able to remove it and restick it. So I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to put it exactly where I want it. And have more foresight than me and make sure you've got plenty of fabric over here for the tail and the size of your block. So I'm going to put this right here. Okay, that's where I want my tail to go. Right there, that's where I would have put it. So, like I had mentioned before, you need to have a grid. To be the most accurate, you need to have a grid. And I'm going to float it this time. So I have re-hooped the hoop with some more no-show poly mesh. I marked center crosshairs on the stabilizer, and I'm going to put them exactly on top of the marks on the mat. And so my hoop is not going to scooch around on me, and that's what I want. Now I'm going to take my grid, and I've got a circle around center. I have some double-sided sticky tape, and I'm going to put that double-sided sticky tape on the print and stick target paper. Since I don't have fabric to hold up over the sides, that's going to help that stay in place. So you want to get that straight on, exactly so the crosshair is right in the middle of that hole. And if you have it, another cool gizmo from Designs and Machine Embroidery, this is called a perfect alignment laser. And I'm going to turn it on, and now I can see the laser is lined up with this. But let's say you don't, and that makes it very easy. So you would just take your project. I really should have had more fabric. And then you can easily see exactly where to line this up at. Can you guys see the laser lines now? Okay. But if you don't have a laser, right? So you want to take your project, and I'm going to line up the lines on the grid with the dark lines I can see on the mat. Put my grid where it needs to go so it fits exactly in the hoop. Yep, this works. Let me do my laser and double check, and it's perfect. So that's why it's handy to have these lines that you can see top, bottom, side to side. Now, without it moving, you need to remove the grid and float it by pinning. I've got this stuck on here. You might want to use some Sulky KK2000. That will also make your life better. See, now if you don't have a grid and you've got the PAL, you're good to go. Yep. That works. You don't need a grid if you've got this. This will work just fine. And that's dead on. Okay. You want to leave this stuck on here until you get ready to stitch. If you don't have KK2000 spray, you can use 505. I don't care for that Ann Taylor or June Taylor, Ann Taylor. I don't care for that June Taylor basting spray. That stuff, ooh, the fumes are disastrous. All right, so this is ready now to go to the embroidery machine and be stitched, and I think it's going to be just fine. Okay, I'm going to go to home, and delete. Go to embroidery, the pocket for memory, USB, and get my tail. Set. And embroidery. Okay. I'm going to put this in here. Okay, now it knows what size hoop is in there. And it says the carriage of your embroidery unit will move. Keep your hands away. I'm going to tell it okay. You want that needle to come down right on that crosshair. And if I try to drop the needle right now, I'm a couple of jots over too far to my left. So I'm going to put my needle all the way back up to the top. I'm going to go to layout and move. And I'm going to jog it back to where I think that needle is going to come down right dead center. That's pretty good right there. That's pretty good. So see how I did that? You want that needle, the 0 point on the needle should be right over that crosshair. That's how you do it without a camera. All right, let's see how we do here. It's exactly where I wanted it. Isn't that nice? Look at that. Got a little bit of thread didn't get pulled down in. Okay, let me pull this out. Iron on my tail. If you had a really small hoop, you could do this. You would just do the body itself by machine. Everything else will fit in 5x7 hoop. Pull that out. I don't want to sew that to my project. Ask me how many times I've done that. Oh, wait a minute. I don't want to do that tack down line. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go to needle plus minus. I'm going to jump ahead one. There we go. All right, let's see how he looks. I think he looks great. What do you think? Oh, you guys, this is so fun. It's like the tail makes it. Okay, so there's Percy and multiple hoopings. I hope this was helpful. We will talk to you soon. Go sew something. Bye.